Team, how could so many gun tubers, gear reviewers, tactical cool guys, and high-speed, low-drag former cool guys turned firearms instructors be so wrong? How could they be so pro-gun but so not pro-2A? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below as we all continue to master our craft and develop our tactical virtue. The first thing that we need to understand is that what the Second Amendment does not do, and this is where a lot of us get it wrong. See T-shirts and hats and bumper stickers that my gun permit is the Second Amendment. That is a wrong statement. The federal government does not give you your rights. Our founding fathers knew this. They knew that the right to self-defense was a natural right. And as they wrote the Second Amendment, it was not to give us rights. It was to prevent the federal government or any government from restricting what is a natural right. It's not simply a play on words. There's an important foundation here that we need to understand. The government does not give you your rights or liberty. It can help secure it. It can help it from being eroded or infringed upon. But it is not where your rights come from. The second thing that I think we need to know and understand is what the Second Amendment actually does. Without getting too knee deep, if you will, on some of the specific words, we need to know and understand that the Second Amendment, which, by the way, wasn't even wanted by the vast majority of our founding fathers, even the author of the Constitution itself, Old Madison, he did not want, as did not many others, including Hamilton and so many others like them, they did not want a Bill of Rights. What they wanted was a strong central government that had total control and power over the states. These dudes were known as the Federalists, and they did not want the Bill of Rights. On the opposing side, you had the Anti-Federalists. Now, these dudes included guys like John Hancock. Remember his big squirrely name on the Declaration of Independence? You had Adams. And these guys were so hated by the British government that the Brits were willing to forgive and pardon everybody except these two. They were going to haul their asses back to England and try them. Probably hang them, kill them. And Jefferson, another strong anti-federalist. These dudes knew the dangers of a strong central government. They had just fought a war for independence to get free and to break free from this crap. They didn't want to return back to the same type of government. Now, I'm not here to argue, what's better, Articles of Confederation or the Constitution. I think everybody had some good points moving into the Constitution, but what the Anti-Federalists said, because they could see the writing on the wall, the Constitution was going to end up being ratified. And they said, if you want our support, ultimately, you need to include a Bill of Rights that will prevent the government from infringing upon at least 10, they wanted 11 originally, at least 10 rights that we believe we all have as citizens, as people. The second one, of course, being what it is that we're talking about now. And so what this Second Amendment does, one of the biggest things that it does, it kind of does basically four things, right? Is it says that we do not need a standing army. This is something that almost every single founding father did not want. They did not want a strong, standing army, full-time. There was no need for it. You raise them up when there's a need. You break it back down when that need dissipates. So here's another issue, right? You can be the most pro-military in the world, but that does not mean that you are pro-Second Amendment. Certainly not in a constitutionalist or founding fathers, an originalist point of view, right? Why don't we need a strong standing army? As argued in the 1700s. Well, we had a good, strong militia, right? In fact, militia is actually in the Second Amendment, right? It's also found in the Constitution, that word militia. Of course, that word then does not necessarily mean what it means today. That word has been abused. It's been misused. It's been hijacked. Originally, militias were formed at the smallest level, at the township level or the town level. And then those companies and troops grew bigger all the way to the state level, right? And we had these militias to do a couple things. But because we had the ability, and this was an old tradition that dates back to our English roots of having a militia, because we had the ability to raise a militia, we didn't need a strong standing army. And this carries on, the reason why we had militias carries on to why we had the Second Amendment. Right? It's not simply for self-defense, which is certainly one of the primary reasons why the Second Amendment is written, is to keep the government from taking your ability away to protect you and your loved ones. In a true originalist way, as well as your property, right? Self-defense. This is where most people get things right? All these gun tubers, I'm sure they would all argue that you have a right to self-defense and that a tool that you should be able to have is a firearm. Of course, to keep and bear arms, I said we wouldn't get too neck deep into this. Our founding fathers believed that the individual and the individual in the militia, who is the militia, depending on what document you look at, it's every male from 16 to 60. Some of it was 15 to 60. And that formed this pool. And that the militia needed all of the stuff to defeat two groups of people. This is the other two reasons why we have a Second Amendment. Don't need a standing army if we have a Second Amendment. Right to self-defense. The ability to defend against foreign invasion. And the ability to repel a domestic tyranny or tyrannical government. That's what the Second Amendment does. So there's lots of folks out there. Some of these dudes run out in pairs of two and advocate. Others advocate for small community groups to go be a quote-unquote militia. Some states have a militia or defense force, but none of them are constitutional. Again, the Constitution describes what the federal government, the power that the federal government has over militias. Congress can call the militia forward. The president can also call the militia forward. Does any unorganized militia that's out there, like non-state militia, if the current president of the United States, or maybe if we dial back to a couple presidents ago, would they stand and be recognized? Or would they stay on their couch? Guilty as charged. If the current administration said, I need all militiamen to come forward and be recognized, be counted, I'd be a little skeptical, as I'm sure you would be. Because it's nothing that has been acted upon in a constitutional way for over 200 years. Because we got this strong standing army. Now we have the selective service, right? It accounts for everybody, right? Hit 18 and you got to be part of this list. The problem is, it has nothing to do with militia. It has to do with the federal government, the standing army that the founding fathers did not want. States have no control over the federal government. Say, well, how about the National Guard? The National Guard emerged from the militia. Maybe, but the National Guard, as currently organized and equipped, is not anything remotely like our original militias. Again, organized at the town level, working for the governor. And here's one of the big things, of course, because the National Guards often work for the states, at times for natural disaster, not what militias are for. But who appointed the original militias officers? It was not done through the same military system that like we have today. Same way to get promoted in the National Guard is basically the same way you get promoted in the regular army. But back in the day, it was the states who appointed the officers for the militia. Therefore, National Guards is not militia 2.0, right? How about all these other militias that are out there? Again, they don't meet the need either. They may be concerned about self-defense and invasion of foreign entities or domestic tyranny. And most of them are actually against a standing army, but they would not comply with a constitutional order to assemble for that muster, right? So you can't tell me that you're a constitutional militia. Now, I would love to see militias come back, starting at the local level, starting at that town level, and being organized and structured in such a way that it performed the functions that it needed to. Of course, you can imagine back in the 1700s, as America was beginning to emerge, one of the number one threats was the violent interaction between the new Americans and those who had been here before. So having a militia enabled to respond against threats that they deemed were necessary to respond to, right? Imagine if your local sheriff's posse, which is potentially one of the closest things, except it's not mandatory, it's not a requirement to be part of your local sheriff's augmentee. But that's about as close as it gets. But it stops there, right? Your state can't come in and tell your sheriff how to run his business. The federal government can't come in and tell your sheriff how to run his business. And that's a good thing, but it also tells us a weakness as far as how far we have come from the original founding fathers' intent for the Constitution and for the Second Amendment. So what can we do? Well, indirectly related to the topic, we can look for areas and things that we can nullify as individuals. And then potentially, what can we do collectively to nullify things that are not constitutional? What I mean nullify, that means don't follow, right? The do does not abide. What are some of these things? We saw it recently in Missouri as it relates to the Second Amendment with some stuff that they had worked on and passed and gone up and been reviewed. And even the highest courts said, what they said, what the state wanted to do, was not participate in any federal task force that was trying to enforce a gun law that infringed upon Second Amendment rights. And there I went in Second Amendment rights. That's the wrong statement, right? That violated the Second Amendment. Stuff becomes so ingrained in us, we can't help but think it. And then that thinking changes our perception of reality. And even the highest court said, you're correct, right? The federal government cannot compel you to do these things. You don't have to fund them. You don't have to participate in them. But some of the extra wording that they had in there was a little jacked, and so they got to go back to the drawing board. What can we do? We can vote in people who actually believe in the Constitution. I have some of the same issues with the Constitution as the Anti-Federalists had in the late 1700s. I have strong reservations about a strong central government that literally tries to mandate and control each and every single aspect of our life and completely erode our liberty. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, or anything else. If that's what you're about, I'm not for you. And unfortunately, I don't think we've seen anybody, at least at the federal level, who's a true constitutionalist in a very, very long time. And I don't think that we're going to see one again until that egg breaks. Team, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below about what it means to be a pro-Second Amendment individual, what it means as it relates to the Constitution, as it relates to the online YouTube verse of all things gun related, and what we can do as citizens to be a better advocate for these two things, for the Constitution and for the Second Amendment. Team, I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date with future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
We know you're out there! Come to my voice!